Can you feel it? Now, if you sort of just instantaneously scan back over your life with huge open-heartedness and self-compassion, do any moments come to mind where you abdicated something deep within yourself? Are there any times during your day that you feel fragmented and, this and that, wanting this and that, fearing this or that, and getting caught on the horns of a dualism, a dilemma? So Steve was saying that both the danger and the beauty of this practice is that it could actually reintroduce you to yourself. So, and Emily Dickinson, as you know, was very badly wounded in love, and she wanted to make her heart, no longer vulnerable. Impregnable, my fortress unto all heart feelings. And then realized, but since myself assault me, how have I peace except by subjugating consciousness, which is what we do most of the time. That's what automatic pilot is. We just deny, suppress, repress, don't pay attention, distract ourselves. And we call that, we call entertainment diversion. We divert ourselves like a river. We have a true course, well, divert it. We do that all the time. Just check out, become mindful, if you will. Here's an invitation for your homework. See how many times during the day you interrupt yourself. And then she realizes, but since we're a mutual monarch, in other words, we're actually one, how this be except by abdication, me of me? Can you feel the pain in that? Can you feel the way in which that in a way is a betrayal of ourselves and our possibilities out of perfectly natural desire to not be hurt anymore, to not have to suffer. And we're all, sort of to a large extent driven without being aware of it because we have subjugated consciousness. How much of the time we're running from pain, discomfort, and towards pleasure, satisfaction, all of which is a fabrication of the mind. So if we can examine how much the mind likes and dislikes different things under a sort of microscope of dispassionate, moment-to-moment, non-judging attention, it's unbelievably revealing. And one of the things that it does is it does give your life back to you, and it also is freeing, is liberative. That's why in the Buddhist tradition, which is mindfulness is often spoken of as the heart of Buddhist meditation, but you have to understand it's not Buddhist. It doesn't have to do with Buddhism any more than, the law of gravity has to do with Italian, because Galileo happened to be Italian, or English because Newton happened to be English. If there's some universal element here that has to do with attention and awareness, then where it comes from is not of primary importance. It's like what its value is, may be. And that value can only be had through tasting for ourselves. And so here's another poem by Derek Walcott, who some of you may know. He's from the island of St. Lucia, African extraction. Nobel laureate in literature, teaches at many U.S. colleges and universities. And this poem is called Love After Love. Again, listen carefully and keep Emily Dickinson in mind. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror. And each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to yourself, To the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you have ignored for another. To the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you have ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit. Feast on your life. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. I think that's what Steve was talking about. This can happen. And if there's any sense that you have no idea what I'm talking about, then, you're probably going to suffer a lot for the next half hour until this talk is over. And that, you know what? And that's perfectly fine. Both that you suffer or that you leave, because it doesn't really matter. What matters is only that we be true to ourselves in the only moment we ever have, which is this moment. And you might ask, from any perspective at all, including the scientific perspective, how do we know anything? How do we know anything? Well, all scientific instrumentation is an extension of the senses. If you want to know what's going on back in time, the era, approaching the Big Bang, what do? You build gigantic radio telescopes. And you turn them towards the heavens, and we use the term, we listen. But we're not listening like with our ears. Those big telescopes are extensions of our ears into wavelengths of ultraviolet radiation that we're not sensate to. So all scientific instrumentation, including PET scans, fMRIs, spectrophotometers, even balances, even scales, telescopes, microscopes, tunneling microscopes, they're all extensions of the senses. Now, how many senses are there? Well, that's an interesting question. In the textbooks it says 5. Maybe, I haven't read any of these textbooks in a while, so maybe it says more than 5 now. The Buddhists would say, classically, 6. Okay? There's seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, and hearing. Okay? And then there's what they would call knowing. The mind, for shorthand, okay? The mind. Okay? Because without this non-conceptual aspect of mind that is kind of a direct knowing, that may involve thought, but it's not completely constrained by thought, we wouldn't know what we were seeing. The eyes by themselves don't know. The ear by itself doesn't know. So what do we mean by mind? Well, even, and I think, I have to say this when I'm in the San Diego, La Jolla area, because, Sir Francis Crick of Watson and Crick fame. Watson, by the way, got his PhD with my thesis advisor, Salvador Luria, in molecular biology. And Watson was Luria's first graduate student. And sometimes, when I was bringing up these kinds of issues with Salvador Luria, and when I was in his lab, he would say to me, Jim Watson was my first graduate student, and you're going to be my last graduate student. But his compatriot Frick, not compatriot, he was English, Crick, who died not too long ago, he wrote a whole book called The Astonishing Hypothesis some time ago. Perhaps some of you read it, which is all about consciousness. And he had the audacity, or the wisdom, to refuse to actually define consciousness. So I'm not going to define mind either, following in that august tradition, but because it's a really interesting question scientifically. but there are aspects of mind that we can begin to sort of attend to and pay attention to using all sorts of instrumentation, like, non-invasive scanning methodologies, and we're beginning to do very, very interesting studies on meditation, using fMRI and quantitative EEG and so forth. And there's not going to be time for me to talk about those this afternoon, but that is happening. But my point about the mind is that the Buddhists have always considered that element of non-conceptual knowing to be another sense. Okay? But they're even more than that, because there's also the sense of proprioception. For instance, this is a remarkable sense that's not really touching, but it's knowing where the body is in time, and for that matter in space, and for that matter in time, moment by moment by moment. Like, I know where my hand is even though I can't see it.